Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Kerbal Space Program. And if you joined us in the last couple episodes, we learned how to get a basic rocket into orbit. We then took that orbiter and we did some orbital operations. And I think now it's time to do a little flyby of the moon. So what we're going to do is we're just going to come on in here and we're going to resume Dumpy. Resume that saved game. And I figured let's design a new rocket. This one has to be a little bigger. The ascent stage needs to be a little more powerful than the little one we had before for the basic orbiter, because we basically have to go a lot farther, a lot higher, right? So let's come back in here and let's grab our Mark 1 pod. Now, the purpose of this rocket, we're not going to land just yet. Next episode, we'll probably talk about how to actually land on the moon. This episode will be, how do you get to the moon? What do you actually have to do in order to get to the moon? So let's think ahead. We'll put our parachute on. We want our Kerbal to survive, right? Let's come over here, grab our decoupler. It's always a good idea to just have the capsule and parachute as the final stage, right? We'll come over here and we'll grab the same fuel tank we had before. Only this time, instead of using the tiny little 909 engine, we're going to come up here and we are going to grab, not that one, this one here with the vectoring range as our main engine here. This kind of looks like the main engine that was used in the Apollo missions, actually, for the command module, service module. I think their engine cowling came down a little further, so just the little bell was sticking out. Anyways, as before, let's go to control, grab the advanced stabilizer, and just in case something horrible happens, we run out of fuel, we want some RCS. Okay, there we are. We're going to need some power, utility, grab the battery bank, and let's select center of mass. Control, we're going to grab the RCS thrust blocks, press the X key 3 times, and we're going to position these, like I said in the first video, roughly equidistant from the center of mass. So right about there. Oop. There we are. Sometimes it doesn't like it for whatever reason. Okay, there's our thrust blocks. Come over to utility and grab some power collectors. These photovoltaic panels. Shift X down to 2. Pop these guys right on like that. There we are. So this is going to be basically our Mooner orbiting stage, right? So let's title this craft Mooner Orbiter and Mark 1 again, right? It's the first of its design. So there it is. This will be the craft that actually orbits the moon. Now we have to get this thing into space, right? So we'll come back over to structural, grab our stack decoupler, throw it on there, bring the whole thing up, holding the shift key. Alright, so we need to get this thing into space. I figure let's do something that kind of resembles the Saturn V rocket, right? I mean, because that is the rocket that took the Apollo astronauts to the moon. It's fitting. So we'll take 2 of these tall, thin T-800s, and we'll go over to propulsion, and again we'll grab the vectoring engine, because it's good to be able to steer. Okay, now this is not enough, right? We need a little more. So what we're going to do is grab some of these radial decouplers again, press the X key to get it to 4, and we'll position them right about there, right on the sides. Come back here, grab the same fuel tank, the FLT, right about there, and we'll hit the Alt key and click, Alt click, we'll copy it, put another set, there we are. Now for these engines, let's use the bigger one, the non-vectoring 215 thrust engine. So there we have our 5 engines, right, just like the Saturn V. Come over aerodynamic, we'll grab these nose cones, make it look pretty. Now here's something we're going to do. We're going to we're going to use what's called the fuel duct, right? So it's this little yellow pipe here, and the way this works is it takes fuel from one set of tanks and dumps it into another set of tanks. But the way you position it has to be just right. So the first spot you click, the first tank you click on, is the tank that the fuel is going to be borrowed from. So we want to have 4 symmetry and place these fuel ducts first on these outer tanks, right? So that's 4 of them on the outer tanks, and we want to just bring that into the center. It's a little bit of a tight squeeze, but it did it. And you can see the arrows on there, if I just zoom a little bit, are pointing up into this tank. So it's going to be borrowing fuel from these outside tanks, dumping it into the center tank. And we're going to want all these engines to fire at the same time, so we'll just make sure that this is staged correctly. So basically they're all 5 going to fire, but this middle stack is going to remain totally fueled up when we go to decouple this. And what that's going to do is vastly increase the amount of total delta V that this rocket will have. Again, delta V being change in velocity. In other words, the amount of fuel is just a lot. It uses it a lot more efficiently. We'll come over here to structural, grab some strut connectors. It's always good to strut it up, strut your stuff, right? Puts them on the bottom. It's a bit of a tight fit, but like I said, that's okay. The game knows. It knows what to do with them. And if you really want to go crazy, we can put some at the top here. Maybe some at the bottom. There we are. There's our basic design. Now, we didn't do this last time. Let's go to aerodynamics, and we're going to grab some fins. I like these little AVR8 winglets because they actually move. They let you they really help you when you're in the atmosphere. So we'll make sure we have 4 symmetry. Pop these right down there. That'll help us just bite into the atmosphere and get us all the way up there. Let's grab some more struts. We might as well strut from the tips here up to here, just to make it a little more stable. Save it again. So it's coming along. It's coming right along. Next, let's be crazy. Let's put some boosters on. I love adding the solid fuel boosters. I don't know why. They're just too cool not to have, right? So last time we used these little RT10s. Let's go big or go home, right? The BACC solid fuel booster. Alright, so we're just going to position that right over them. Right about there should do us. Yep. Again, let's grab some nose cones. This one, too small, right? We want the bigger one. There we are. And always strut, right? Always strut your stuff. You'll thank me later. So there we go. Okay, now, when these things decouple, sometimes they will accidentally crash into the rest of your rocket. So Squad made these awesome little Sepatron engines. And so the way they work is you just take them here, and we're going to position them roughly in the center of mass between these 2 stacks here, which is basically right in the center, right? I'm going to press the D key once, and it shifts the nozzle to point inwards. And so we're just going to make sure it points pretty much directly at the center tanks. Right about there should be okay. We have to do the other side, so we'll Alt-click it, copies it, come right around, press the D key twice again, point it, well, again, towards the center of the ship. Looks like this one's a little higher, so we'll do this like that. That's about even. And so now we have to make sure that's staged properly, right? So first we should move these into that stage. This is our ascent stage, right? Right, so the first thing that happens is everything fires. All the rockets fire, right? We should probably do this too. We should take these things to prop the whole thing up. There we are, and make sure that's also disconnecting with the firing of the engines. Okay, so the next thing that happens is these should decouple. Now it likes to throw the Separatrons in with them, but really they need to go in when these decouple, right? Because we want them to push away when these things are done firing. So we're just going to take the Sepatron engines, so these little things, we're just going to move them up one stage. Make sure you get both of them. We'll save that. Now, these ones shouldn't have any problem. The big boosters should fall straight away. But sometimes, like I said, these little inner stages can accidentally fall into your engines and just cause a big headache and leave you very upset. So that's why we put the Separatrons on, and it should create a beautiful, almost flower petal shape once it all decouples. It sounds kind of strange, but you'll see what I mean when we do it, right? So let's just check the rest of it. So again, everything fires, the boosters disconnect. The next thing that happens is the outer rockets disconnect with the Sepatron engines. Finally, this decouples. We activate our orbiter main engine. And then finally the last thing that happens is this decouples. So there we have it. Let's add action groups for our panels. I always like to make the panels custom 1. But it's up to you entirely. If you would rather it be 2 or 3 or 0, it doesn't matter. I just always get used to putting it as 1. Just because that's what I'm used to, right? So, I think we're good. Let's choose a different pilot now. Little crew. Jebediah always rides the rockets. Let's let Bill have a turn, right? Good old Bill Kerman. He'll have a shot at the moon. I think we're ready to launch. So let's take it out to the launch pad. And we're loading. And we're loading. And we're loading. Here we are. It's getting towards nighttime, isn't it? What I think I might do is I just might time warp a little bit. Hopefully it doesn't mess too. Oh, there we are. So it was actually getting towards daytime. Here we are at noon. So let's do a couple things. We'll press the T key and we'll throttle the ship. Now I have this feeling that this is severely overpowered, so I might leave the throttle at around 2/3. Let's see what happens. We're going to launch it right now. All rockets firing. Look at that. There's our target destination, the moon, right? So one of the important things I look at again is the speed at the top of the nav ball. You want to keep it under 200 when you're under 10 kilometers or 10,000 meters. So we're already accelerating really fast. So I'm just going to hit the control key, bring us down to about a 1/3 thrust. Because what's happening is these solid fuel boosters are just bombing us into orbit really fast. We'll let them do most of the work, right? That's their job anyways. Throttle down even more, right? We're almost at 170. But they're almost out of fuel. So we'll get ready to stage it. And there we are. Whew, that was close. Alright, now we better throttle back up again, right? Because we've lost a significant amount of thrust. So, throttle right back up. And you can see these outer engines are actually a little bigger than that inner one. And that's what I mean by these outer ones thrust a little harder, but they don't have vectoring. You can't turn too well with them. It tends to be more unstable. So I put that one little engine in there that can turn to help us out. And of course these wings will help us too. Alright, we're at 10 kilometers, so we are going to press the D key, pitch over to the 90-degree mark, ever so slightly at first. We'll keep this throttle because honestly, we're already accelerating at about 2 Gs, 1.5 Gs, so that's perfectly fine. Press the M key, take a look. See, we're already getting nice height, really nice height. So we can just keep on pushing over. So we're just literally turning the craft over. Very similar to our first video where we talked about getting that basic craft into orbit. It's just a little more complicated, this particular craft, but in essence it's the same stuff you're doing, right? Pitching over a little harder because I know we're getting really nice. Wow, we're getting ridiculous height. I'm just going to turn this thing, I'm going to turn it pretty much almost all the way over because we have so much thrust. I'm just going to go right over. Looks like we're just about out of thrust in these side engines, so get ready to separate. Let's test out those separatrons, right? Hopefully we did it right. We'll find out right now. Oh, look at that. So those things, they really kick. Those separatrons really thrust hard, don't they? They just are ridiculous. Okay, so as you can see, we're thrusting a little less now, right? Because we lost all those engines. There they go in their little square pattern. Still in the square pattern. Just gotta turn all the way over to the 90. And we're almost there, right? We're gonna get to a 100-kilometer orbit. Throttle up a little bit. Plenty of fuel. So you might have noticed, right, when I jettisoned those stages, these rockets right here still have full fuel, or had full fuel, right? And there's our 100. So basically what happened was those outer stages were feeding these inner tanks, and once we jettisoned them, they were full, even though they were firing, that's how we get the most efficiency out of these rockets. Or one of the ways. There's probably an even more efficient setup called the asparagus, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So here we are, we're coasting to Apoaps. We'll put our maneuver node. Pull this thing right out here. Get our circular orbit. It's going to take 40 seconds, so we'll burn right now. Wasn't the most efficient rise, but we're gonna get there. And we're actually gonna use part of the stage to get to the moon. So we're trimming down the delta V, getting that rocket into orbit. We call that the orbital insertion burn. It's flipping around the camera, so that means we're just about there. Cut the engines with the X key, and there's our orbit, 103 by 97. Not perfect, but not bad. So we're in orbit. We want to get to the moon. How does one get to the moon? Well, first thing, we want to find it, and we're just going to click on it and set it as target. That generally helps us. We'll see some interesting things here, like the descending node, the ascending node. Basically, this is our inclination relevant to the moon, and it's almost perfect. It's like it says, it's 0.6 off, but that's not really going to affect much. It's just a little off, so we're not going to bother correcting it. So what we have to do, you might think, all right, well, we're just going to point at the moon and thrust, right? We'll just pull out and thrust at it. But as you can see, these two little nodes appear. Closest approach, separation is 12,000 kilometers away, so the moon is going to be here when we're here. So we can't just point right at the moon and thrust, because we're going to miss it, right? The moon's also moving. So what we have to do is account for that. We're just going to take our maneuver node and pull it until these two reticles match up. Now there we go, we start to get an encounter. And you can see as we pull it around, it changes a little bit. So we're going to want this projected orbit to go basically around the moon, right? We're going to want it to go around basically the same side that we are orbiting. So basically counterclockwise, right? So let's see if we can... Periapsis is 300. Periapsis is 65. There we go. It's a little closer. Now, the closer you get it out here, the more efficient it's going to be. So this is going to tell us what's basically going to happen. When we're here, the moon is going to be, it's hard to see it, right there, that little orange blob over here. And our periapsis on the moon will be 65 kilometers, which that's okay, we can always correct it later. So let's find our little node here, right? Our blue marker. And you can see we have a new reticle on the nav ball, the pink circle. It's right now directly over the retrograde. That pink circle is the target, that's the moon. So that's where the moon is on the nav ball. Our burn isn't until 14 minutes, so we are just going to accelerate time. Swoop around the planet. You can see the pink reticle is starting to appear. Now, before they made maneuver nodes, which I think they made those in 0.18, you had to just guess. You had to just guess where to burn. There was no such thing as a maneuver node, and I found that I missed it so much. The developers made this neat little thing where, in case you didn't feel like, or didn't know about maneuver nodes, or before they're, you could basically burn as soon as the moon rises. And I think that's still the case, you know, today. We're just getting there. In fact, we could probably burn pretty much right now, actually. It's just about to peak around the corner, but we're going to burn now because that's where we want. That's where our particular thing's going to be. So here we are. I probably started that a little late, but it's going to be okay. It'll be okay. We'll use this ascent stage, basically the leftover fuel, to get us to the moon. Should have enough. So here we are. We are just pushing our orbit way up. That's all we're doing, really. There's nothing magical. It's to get to the moon or any other orbital body, really. You just bubble your orbit out until you hit its altitude, which is, the moon is about, you know, 11,000 kilometers, right, or 11 million meters. And we're just gonna push that out till we get to that point in the right spot, though, right? We're gonna throttle down a little bit. We're almost there, and boom. I think that's just about right. Let's just check. Might need to push it a little more, maybe a little less, actually. Let's turn around. We want that encounter that we went for, right? Because it looks like we're crashing into the moon at this point, which, you know, we don't want to do that. Turning the ship around, thrusting backwards a bit. There we are. So that gives us our periapsis back. We can use the RCS to just change it a little bit. Let's get it down to 30 is okay. 30 is good, right? Alright, that's our encounter. What this all basically means is this is our orbit. This is when we encounter the moon's gravity, and it's going to change our orbit. It's going to pull us in and into a new orbit. So we'll mess with that when we get there. Now we have some fuel left over, but honestly we are really not going to need it. I might have overplanned. I always do that because I'm so paranoid about running out of fuel. But we're fine in this case. Let's just do an F5, just a quick save in case something weird happens, and let's just see ya. We'll get rid of that stage, right? We don't really need it. And we'll activate, get the engine ready. Oh, almost forgot. Press 1, get our panels out, right? You would not want to forget those panels. Bill Kerman seems okay. He's happy. So let's just time accelerate. We are flying to the moon. We are getting away, and there's their stage falling away. It's gonna pretty much follow us the whole way there. It's really not that far away. It looks like it's so far away, but it's practically right next to us. Space is very, very big. It's deceptive. As you can see, we're getting closer to the moon. Bye-bye Kerbal, our home planet. Our encounter is 3 hours away, but luckily we have the magic of time warp. We're really coming up now, right? Don't want to go too fast. You don't ever want to accidentally time warp past these things, because what can happen is the physics can't deal with it sometimes at that high speed, and you'll end up ricocheting off and flying out into deep space, and it won't be good for your pilot. Actually, it doesn't really matter because they don't need any food or anything, right? So here we are, coming up on the encounter, and there. So you see, it's suddenly changed. We have a totally different orbit now, right? The blue is our current orbit. Now let's say if we didn't do anything, we're going way too fast. We would slingshot right around the moon. Actually, well, technically this looks like we'll crash right into it. But let's say we were out a little further. We would go right out, escape the moon, fly out, and actually we would come out and escape the Kerbal system. We would fly right out into deep interplanetary space, which we don't want to do that. We just don't want it. So we have to do some corrections. So maneuver node, let's get this going across the equator. We'll thrust north, right? And actually that will bring our periapsis out a little bit. So that should do it. Thrusting north, that brings us close to the equator. It's like a 1 second burn. We'll find that node. Now it says 8 minutes away, but we're just going to do it right now. That's it. That's all we need. And now we're right there on the equator. You can't really tell from this point, but we've just totally changed our orbit. Now, let's bring our periapsis out a little bit. Thrust, we're going to pull this radial marker, we're going to pull it away from the planet, and you'll see. Now it's at 20. Let's go to 20, 21. 20 is okay. We'll keep it at 20. Because remember, there's no atmosphere on the moon, so we'll never hit any air resistance. You can practically fly about 10 kilometers safely above the moon without worrying about smashing into anything. But we'll just go for 20. So again, we can do this burn right now. Just push it out. Perfect. It was like a millisecond burn. There it was. All right. Now again, we can't just leave it like this. So we're right at periapsis. We're gonna pop a maneuver node. Retrograde to brake. See the orbit coming in. And we're gonna make it circular. Happened very quickly. It's so fast. It flips so fast you can't even see it. That's okay. We can always adjust it. So we'll point at our vector here and we'll accelerate towards the moon. It's pulling us into its gravity. Swiveling around. Oh, look at that sunrise over the moon. Beautiful. Beautiful. It's going to be an 8-second burn, so we're going to wait till about 4 seconds. Coming up on burn, we are about 20 kilometers above the moon's surface. And burn. So we're slowing down. Just going to shift around again to show us that we're in orbit. And that should do us. 24, let's make it a little more circular. 22 by 19, alright, that's close. So we are just floating above the moon. And that is how you get your moon orbit. We're just flying right by. Now let's see. I'm certain that there is an anomaly of some sort on one of these craters. It's probably on the dark side. I think it's that one right there. Yeah, it's on the dark side, so maybe we'll check out anomalies at another one. There's about, I think there's like 5 or 6 of them on the moon. There's a bunch of them. Let's change the view. Pressing the V key, we'll go to free. This gives us like a slightly more appropriate view. Flying over the moon. Do a little time warp just to kind of see what's going on. There's a big crater. One of the big craters on the moon. Now if you're playing the career mode, these are awesome spots to land because you get a lot more science landing in spots like that. There's about 4 big craters on the moon, and but there's a bunch of different biomes. I think there's like 6 or 8 different biomes, and each one gets you, a little bit more science. But if you're just mucking around and playing, you can land anywhere. Really, it doesn't really matter. We won't be landing in this particular stage because we don't have any landing legs, so that would be quite bad. We probably could get this thing down, land it right on the bell of the engine, but we're not going to do that. We'll leave that for some of the other prestigious YouTube Let's Players. Alright, now we're orbiting the moon, right? What if you want to get back home? Right? You've seen all the sights that you want to see. How does one get home from the moon? Well, you don't just kind of... you probably might think, well, let's just put a node in and burn till we break, right? Break out. There we are. Okay, well, but it doesn't... we can actually do it more efficiently. We can take this, and if we point this... now the moon is rotating around Kerbin counterclockwise, right? It's going down here. So if we burn in the opposite direction of the rotation, even though we're burning to accelerate, it's going to kill our orbital velocity, our net orbital velocity. Again, counterintuitive, right? We're increasing our speed, but it's canceling our orbital velocity around Kerbin. So we thrust on this side of the planet, on the moon, sorry, until the periapsis on Kerbin, this purple, gets right into the atmosphere. Around 30 is fine. 30 to 20 is okay. This way we will definitely break in the atmosphere. Not break apart, I mean we'll air brake, right? And that'll get us home. So let's point the ship at the maneuver node here. And if I'm correct, we should see a beautiful Kerbin rise. Should be coming up very soon. There she is. There's our beautiful blue and green planet. God, this game is pretty. Space in general is pretty. And there's Minmus all the way back there. If you see right at the top of Kerbin, it's just a tiny point of light. Minmus is... and it's true, it's right at the opposite side, that other purple orbit back there. How interesting. It's going to be a 7-second burn. We'll burn it around 4 seconds. And there we are. Thrusting. So you can see we're bubbling out the moon's orbit, and there. That was very quick. This is a very good engine. I really like this engine. 38, let's just bring it down to 23. Just tapped the shift. I love this engine, the one we're using right here. It's very strong. You get a lot of thrust to weight ratio, which means a little thrust goes a long way, right? Okay, well, we just got to the moon. Obviously, if you are on your own playing, you can just hang around the moon a lot longer if you want. I'm just telling you how to get there. Once you're there, you can do all the basic orbital operations that we learned in episode 2, right? The previous episode. This episode was just how to get to the moon and back safely, right? We're going to time warp. The moon's going to fall away from us. And what's going to literally happen is, you can see Kerbin rotating. We're going to fall straight towards Kerbin. We're just going to fall into it. We'll go to 1,000. And there, I think, yep. So we are back on our return trajectory to Kerbin. We're no longer in the moon's influence. Our periapsis is 23. That's a little steep into the atmosphere. If this was real life, that you may not want to come in like that, but it's Kerbal Space Program. So we'll time accelerate back towards Kerbin. There's our continent, right? And we're coming in. Looks like we're gonna land on the night side. Alright, we didn't use any of the RCS fuel, but that's okay. You never know when you might need that little bit of RCS. Let's get ready to ditch the stage. Point it away from us, right? It doesn't really matter, but it's kind of fun to watch it fly away. There it goes. It's just going to fly away, and we're just going to time accelerate until we start hitting that atmosphere. As you can see up at the top, the atmospherometer is getting towards the blue, and here we are. Re-entry effects. We are burning up, but it's okay. Bill can handle it. See, he's happy. Look at it. Look at him down there. He's a happy guy. Check out our orbit. Now this is called air braking. We don't have to spend any fuel. We are just letting the air pull our orbit right down. It's essentially we're essentially burning without actually burning, which is kind of neat. So you can see already, there we go. We're already going to crash right into the planet, but we're not going to crash because we have our parachute, right? That's why we have that thing. We're really burning up. We're about 4 Gs deceleration. It's getting hot in there for old Bill. Let's go to auto. So automatically shifts us down to this kind of view. Just bleeding off that speed. We're at about Mach 3 right now. Still ridiculously fast. Still coming in. Still got the last little remnants of that wispy re-entry effect. So here we are. We are through the atmosphere. Getting through it, we're going to deploy our chutes. There they go. Do a little time acceleration. We're wobbling right down. Just falling towards the planet at a much more controlled rate now, right? So we're going to let up on the time control. While this thing deploys, there we are. And again, we'll time accelerate to the bottom. There you go. I hope you liked this video. Again, demonstrating how to get to the moon. We didn't land on it. I think next episode we'll actually talk about building a nice little moon lander so we can apply basically everything we learned so far. Getting it to orbit, boosting our orbit up, getting it to lunar orbit, and landing on the moon. We can pick a nice little crater or something to land in, ascending from the moon's surface and getting back to Kerbal safely. Thanks for watching. See you next time.